Namo Amida Butsu. Thank you so much for dropping by. If you're new to this channel or this topic, please do check out my introductory video on this topic. So, to anyone who's new, I've been around the spiritual block for almost approaching 26 years. I've explored so many different things, and not just explored, but practiced a lot of different forms of meditation and been not just studying, but very active doing various practices. And one of the teachers I really dived into was a Hindu teacher named Ramana Maharshi. And, he taught this, he's most famous for a very specific practice called self-inquiry, which I tried and didn't have much success with. And also, as I studied his teachings more deeply, I recognized that I wasn't qualified to even practice that. He says, to practice this, you have to be a highly evolved being. And he even put out specific criteria. And I realized that I wasn't qualified to practice it, and I probably never would be in this lifetime. And then I came across a quote of his, which is what really turned me towards Jodo Shinshu, and which is kind of funny, given that he's a Hindu teacher. But he said, there are only two ways. He said, inquire into the source, which that is a very brief description of his instructions for how to do for the self-power practice that he recommends. He said, inquire into the source or admit your inability that you require the help of a higher power. Now, when I read that, I was just like, well, I can't inquire into the source. Like, I'm not qualified. That I kind of, just for a variety of reasons, I just knew that path wasn't for me. I was like, admit my inability, that I require the help of a higher power. I'd never heard anything like that. But actually, I kind of had heard, that's a similar message from the 12 steps, but it grabbed me. And that was almost, I guess that was almost 4 years ago, maybe 3 years, 3.5 years ago, that one simple phrase, admit your inability, that you require the help of a higher power. And I went a little kind of, not nuts, but I kind of became obsessed with that phrase, and no one was talking about how to do it. And of course, I was looking, at that time, I was looking within the Hindu framework, because that's where this idea, Ramana taught within a Hindu framework, and no one was talking about it. And then I started to come across these ideas like surrender and humility and trusting and principles like that. And I was like, I knew that was my path, but no one was teaching how to do it. And ultimately, that's what led me to Jodo Shinshu, is that recognition of, hey, I can't. In Shin Buddhist terms, like, to quote Honen, like, I'm not qualified for the path of sages. And so that leaves me for I don't know what he called the other path, the path of the idiots, the path of the non-sages, the non-virtuous people, those of the lowest moral caliber, which he described himself as. So that's what led me to Jodo Shinshu, is that one simple phrase. And this recognition of the truth behind it, which is, I can't, is just, I can't, much less do life, but free myself. In Buddhist terms, free myself from the cycles of birth and death. But back then it was, more, I was thinking more as a Hindu, I can't lead myself to liberation, is what it is often called in Hinduism, moksha, liberation. So that's what led me to Jodo Shinshu, is it's the first path that, when taught correctly, and sadly, normally nowadays it isn't taught correctly. And by correctly, I mean just taught the way Shinrin taught it, and the Honen taught it. But we'll just focus on taught the way Shinrin taught it. So that's what led me here. That one little phrase and the recognition of the truth of it. And I feel like if we just tweak that a little bit, that's the entire Jodo Shinshu message. I admit my inability. I require Amitabha Buddha to help me. As long as we keep in mind that inability is referring to inability to attain nirvana or Buddhahood, and the help we're seeking from Amitabha Buddha is just that. I admit my inability. I require a higher power to help me. I admit my inability to attain nirvana, Buddhahood. I need the help of a Buddha. Namo Amida Butsu.